Welcome to the Pint and Click podcast. I'm Dave. I'm here with Joel and Charlie and Tony, and we're here to talk about a new nonfiction book called I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. It is one woman's obsessive search for the Golden State Killer. This book has been in the news not only because it's new, but because there's been revelations in the case. So today we're going to talk about the book and what we think of the book and what we know of the case, and maybe exciting updates just coming in last week. But first off, we're here to talk about the book, the experience of reading I'll Be Gone in the Dark. So guys, what did you think of the book?
I would say true crime at really its finest.
Yeah.
Really a reflection of it's true, and there's certainly a lot of crime, but it was really not only about what she coined the term, Golden State Killer. She was the first to coin that term, but also it was her search for this perpetrator through decades of research. And I found that fascinating that she was able to get what was inside of her head out onto the page so prolifically and so interestingly to keep leading you through. And you kind of felt like you were, wherever she was in the book, you felt like you were right next to her. She took you every single place, through her childhood, into police cars of detectives that had been looking at this case for decades, just living this every day and just giving you a sense of not only the crimes, but the reactions to the people that it left behind, to the victims' families, and also to her own family, how it affected her own family and how it affected her. And I just thought it was a terrific book. If you care about someone's personal story, about looking for their white whale, kind of a thing, and also if you're looking at just a fascinating, I hate to use the word fascinating, but a scary moment in California history, I would highly, highly recommend this book.
Yeah. When I was on the page, when I was reading, I was absolutely obsessed with this moment and where we are and what we're doing. These characters, these places, these people. Sometimes, like you say, she talks about the family of the victims, or sometimes she's talking about herself and her family. And it's like in that moment, like I always care. She talks about she's on the red carpet at a movie premiere and she's checking her phone because news is broken about another case. And it's like, oh, I know that feeling. I know what this person is experiencing. I know how, you're in one place, but your mind is somewhere else. And that's not even the compelling part of the story. Is the killer and the emotional drain on the families of the victims and these detectives who have been at it for, at this case and other cases, for their entire careers, their entire lives. She finds moments in these cold cases or her own life to make you connect. Every page, you're connected to somebody or something that's going on.
Yeah. And I think in addition to connecting to this type of struggle, you're also drawn in by the persistence and the real hard work with only small victories that really are amounting to nothing in the case of a cold case, which it is throughout the entirety of the book. I mean, revelations of this case didn't actually happen until after this book was published. But all the pieces that are held within here, you can tell anytime that she's writing about the detectives and writing about her interviews with them, that she has such a great understanding of them. When she goes to the towns, she even gives the towns a personality, which I think is just an incredible mark as a writer to be able to pull off.
Yeah, the description of, I've never been to the area, so I really enjoyed the description of not only the town presently, but of the past and where it's come from and how it affects the story. And it really transported you that you were in backyards of these homes in the late 70s and the surfer culture and the golden sunsets and the dark, dark nights and the visceral fear that these people experienced. I mean, I listened to it as an audiobook, so I was able to hear that, and maybe the audiobook was great, but part of that, I think you can experience emotion a little bit differently when you hear it as opposed to read it. And as was mentioned before about the cold case, the dogged determination of these people with the small victories, it wasn't necessarily their choice. They had nothing else, like whatever they were working on these years later, they would always come back to, who was this person? What happened? I need to solve it. They really didn't have a choice. And in some cases, to do anything different than to keep looking, keep
Right.
looking, keep looking.
Yeah.
She does a really good job of explaining like the shortcomings of a criminal investigation in the 1970s, where like anytime someone ran into a dead end, they'd consult hypnotists or psychics, and although those methods didn't really yield many usable results, she doesn't roll her eyes at it. She doesn't speak derisively about the people who investigated.
Sure.
There's an empathy that she has because she knows that she's not the only person who's looked into these rabbit holes and come up empty-handed. And there's one point where she mentions a fellow sleuth that she met online who points out that based on geographic history and physical description, a good suspect would be Tom Hanks, who it should be emphasized can be eliminated by the shooting schedule of bosom buddies, which is also a good example of her ability to, in the middle of a very dark story, put in a little funny detail.
Turn on the release valve a little bit.
Yeah, exactly, because there's a lot of tension that's unresolved in this book.
Like Get Out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I enjoyed the writing style very much. Reading it on the page, it's very straightforward, very plain on purpose, I think, where it's just short sentences that are just like, you walk into the house, the kitchen's on the left, the blood stain is to the north, and it's just like, that's reality now, right? She doesn't hide the details. She doesn't overly dramatize the details. She's just like, this is this person's experience now, is that they see the blood stain.
It's matter of fact.
Yeah.
But also frightening.
Yeah, and that's what made it so frightening.
It's fairly obvious she spent thousands and thousands, read thousands and thousands of pages of police files.
Sure.
Right.
Because she was able to mimic that, I'll bet you. Very well.
Yeah. So I think it's a phenomenal work. I think it's riveting. But it's not tiresome somehow.
Yeah.
You'd think you'd be tired reading about all these characters. They're real people, but at the end of the day, like every chapter is like, I'm not going to remember these people's names. I'm not going to remember these people's jobs. But for the moment, when you're on the page reading that chapter, you absolutely care about these people and their jobs and their lives.
And she does describe them in a way that do kind of stick in your head of was he an FBI agent or a police officer who came out of his house and saw someone he actually chased after, the stalker, and the stalker fired at him and it hit his flashlight. And so these are details within the story. I don't remember his name or whatnot, but I remember that happened.
Yeah.
And the bravery that it took of that and just the uniqueness of that. All these different things are happening and just what this perpetrator encountered time after time after time.
Right.
Yeah.
She's just giving an idea of the gall it took for him to keep at doing this.
Almost like there's an emotional vacuum in the prose, and you are sucked into it with your emotion.
Exactly.
About it.
You feel it yourself.
I would be afraid in this moment. I would run in this moment, or I would feel helpless in this moment. And so you're putting yourself into the shoes of these people because she's not doing it for you, for one, because she wasn't there. It's so matter of fact that you have to give flesh and life to these grim facts about how they were found and, pieces of their bodies that were missing and marks on the wall and destruction of property.
And yet she acknowledges, I think she looks at other writers, and I think when the one time maybe that they were deserving of criticism, she made sure to mention it in the book where there was this one article where the information was good, but they did a poor job. And I think this was maybe written in the 70s or 80s, but she says they did a poor job of painting the victim in an okay light. In a sense, she was exemplifying how to write about terrible things.
Yeah.
But when it called for it, she was able to call someone else out on maybe their writing that kind of missed the mark in that regard.
Yeah. It's really easy for a true crime book to come off as ghoulish or exploitative because, in the end, it is a book that will be sold. So you have to take that into account and make sure that it's not being a cheap thrill for folks who are just looking for the gory bits. And I think that she does a really good job of making it very human and making sure that it's not cheap or tawdry.
Sure.
It's kind of unorthodox for a lot of true crime. A lot of those are just chronological dates and times and crimes. And this one jumps all over the place. It goes from place to place, time to time, and I think that makes it less
Less fantastic.
Yeah.
Or sensationalized.
Yeah, less sensationalized is what I'm going for, yeah.
But there's that point, too, where she herself comes up with this brilliant idea, this strong connection, and why hasn't anyone ever thought of this before? And she's really excited about it, and she talks to her fellow sleuths that she's met online, and they, of course, have thought of that, and they're like, oh, do you mean so-and-so? And they describe exactly what she was thinking about, and then she's kind of deflated all the way down because, and she's laughing at herself because who hasn't investigated a crime and thought of, like, no one else has ever thought of this, but of course everyone has.
Sure.
And she was very descriptive of that moment, too, where she
Right.
was able to relate that.
One of the things that sticks out in this book is just the many, many avenues of evidence that became available as time went on. And she even references some early forensics. I think there was the tale about like the sickles,
Yeah.
which was really cool, basically describing a village where a murder was committed in the village and everybody laid down their sickles after the fact, and flies were attracted to the one that still had blood on it, some remnants of the blood. The respect for the history of forensics and the respect for where forensics is going to and evolving into was really fascinating. And in fact, I would say to a large extent pulled me into the world of that she was living in. And we were talking a lot about how once you're in the page in that web of facts and data and evidence and interviews, you end up realizing how much is out there through a Google search, through genealogy and databases like that. And the world gets opened up to you slowly, as it was kind of for her and as she needed to explore.
Right.
So
I find it really fascinating that she wasn't on a police force. She wasn't a criminal justice major. Like, she was a private citizen with access to the same databases and records that we have, and knew instinctively who the right people to talk to would be and how best to approach them, and managed to get an incredible amount of access through that.
And the ability to do that, and her idea to do that, it just kind of seemed natural to her that, like, oh, I should ask other people
Right.
what they think, and we should network about this. And, you know, in the 70s, police departments, if a crime happens in Sacramento and another one happens in Santa Barbara, you know, they're not going to know
Right, yeah.
that, oh, a very similar crime was committed halfway across the state.
Yeah.
But nowadays, it almost seems too obvious
Yeah.
that these crimes are related, because we have all that information readily available, and we have people who are able to communicate better than they ever could before.
Yeah.
Like before, it was like, you know, you need to make a phone call to another detective and state your intent, and that detective might be out to lunch or something like
Right.
that. But, you know, in the modern communication of the internet, forum boards and things like that, they could communicate at their own speed. If you're researching something, maybe you don't need to check in every day, or maybe you do, and you can share these ideas, and other
Yeah.
people can share their ideas. And, you know, it became available and
Yeah.
led to a suspect.
Right. And also culture changed so much. Like, in the 70s, there certainly wasn't an investigation discovery channel where every single show is about forensic evidence. There wasn't crime procedurals on every major station that sort of take you step by step into criminals' MOs. It seems like more people speak the language now. More people seem to have that sort of investigative mindset where they want to solve the puzzle.
Am I wrong in thinking that this was a case that actually led to a greater partnership between, you know, local municipalities or state level or even international? Like, wasn't there a part of the book she talks about the sharing of communication,
Right.
partially because of this case? Or
Yeah,
is
I
it,
think the DNA case law in California changed as a direct result of this case. It was something about anyone who was involved in a violent assault had to have a DNA sample taken of them. This was the case to sort of spur that on. And early in the book, she does mention a detective who had worked on previous cases that were later linked to the same perpetrator, and how he was able to sort of connect some of those links.
right? So this perpetrator had two names for a while before she gave him the Golden State Killer.
right.
2 or 3, I think. Something.
Right, you're right. There were three different people being investigated, whereas they turn out to just be the one,
Right.
it turns out. So I believe the first one was the Visalia Stalker.
Visalia Ransacker or something.
Yeah.
Because a
Yes,
lot of
Visalia
break-ins
Ransacker.
took place. Yeah, that
Right.
was just break-ins and houses being ransacked in those cases, which are many.
And then it was the East Area Rapist, and
Right.
then the original Night Stalker.
Stalker, right.
Oh,
And
right, yeah.
It seems like that's just textbook escalating.
Right.
It's someone who starts very small, just breaking into houses and throwing things around and stealing personal effects, and then getting bolder and the crimes getting more horrible.
Right.
Having all of the pieces in front of you, you can start to formulate narratives.
Right.
But previously, when it was thought that those were three separate criminals, there's a lot of red herrings that at one point she gives the analogy of it's like buying a jigsaw puzzle at a garage sale where there's pieces of other jigsaw puzzles mixed into it, which is pretty apt.
Right. And I think something about the public-private working with law enforcement and acknowledging that the public will go beyond just an eyewitness account and will have a voice and have a perspective, something to add to a case. I feel like that breakthrough, if you call it that, or that evolution of, I guess, surveillance, in a sense, in these terrible cases, it gives you hope for neighbors, and the world. Just gives you hope for more eyes on the really bad things that are happening, that you can't hoist the responsibility of catching someone completely 100% on law enforcement and things, So
Yeah.
I think that there's some really interesting topics that come up in this book.
Right.
Including privacy, which is only briefly mentioned in regards to the genealogy database. But in cases like this, it's tough to make a hard and fast rule because this is such an extreme case.
Right.
And just finding those connections, it's not readily apparent. It took time. Like, regardless of the internet coming about and forming these communities, there's one set of detectives here and there's one set of detectives downstate and there's one set of detectives. No one put them in a room and said, oh, your cases are connected. Share information and figure it out.
Right.
That took years. Whether or not the information was readily available, I mean, it was in those files, in those cabinets, I assume, for decades, those sitting there as cold cases. And it's just like, even with the internet, you can't solve that in a minute. You can't figure that out in an hour. Like, it took her years of research with all the benefits of modern technology to put a lot of these cases together. Well, technology in communication is better than it was. Like, sometimes it takes someone who can provide an outside perspective and provide a lot of time to say, I found a connection here that maybe, if you're a detective working a case and you've got a caseload of 5 or 10 cases, like, you don't have time to search for connections out of state, I assume. I don't know.
And she's pretty upfront about the toll that it takes dwelling in this very dark subject matter. And we haven't mentioned it, but she did tragically and very untimely die while still writing the book. And whenever she mentions her insomnia or the nightmares that sort of, at one point she says, there's a scream permanently lodged in my throat. And like, that anxiety is very real. And every time there's a pre-chapter, like this chapter was pieced together from rough drafts of this article, it just sort of underlines that this is not easy work to do. It can definitely take an emotional toll, which I think probably has something to do with the amount of empathy that she has towards pretty much everyone who's been involved in the case.
You bring up a really great point about how one should wake up in the middle of the night and start working, like an impulse driven to carry on the work because the work is like an obsession that she's drawn to. It shows that this is a biographical book as well. I mean, and there are chapters which are biographical, and it's something that makes this book very good, actually, is what it is. It's not, it gives you, the reader, the empathy for the people, including Michelle, who are doing the work, and, to understand it from her perspective, and then to see what effect it might have on even like her family and, and close friends. Just, they know how much she's into it because it's a world that she has to imagine in order to be so eloquent about it in the book. So
yeah, it is not work anyone would want to do. Well, I shouldn't say that because obviously she did it.
But you're maybe speaking from your own perspective.
Driven
That's tough,
to do. She was driven to do it. She would wait for her husband and daughter to go to sleep And she would open up her laptop. Now's the time that I do this work. That's not casual. That's not clicking around the internet and reading the occasional article. Like, she would obsess.
Well, she tracked down case files. She,
Talked to detectives.
Right. She paid X amount of money for 1,000 pages of case files and stuff like that. And the mother load, I think she mentioned, and she was excited and almost repelled at the same point by this topic.
Yeah.
And it's just a heady concoction that just drove her.
And just for the record, I'm not even like a true crime reader, but I think that this book is, you could read it even if you're squeamish and it won't linger on any of the details. So it's really the story and the pieces together that make it into something. If you want to understand why maybe this genre or this book or this, why even pick up a book like this, you have to kind of start reading it to find out. It's kind of hard to explain other than, what we've talked about, the empathy and the human stories that might not have been heard, or if it wasn't for this book. There's many, many of the victims' stories. So it's shedding light on a wider breadth of the story. So, I feel like it's an important book, and I'm happy that we chose to read it for this.
Like you, I've never read true crime, and my God, if they're all like this, like
They're not all like this.
no, I assume not. But I'm not a true crime reader. I'm not a nonfiction reader. But if you can find another writer like this, another book like this must be singular. Like, this is amazing.
It is. I would say in the top 5, if anyone put together a book of top 5, top 3 true crime books, this would have to be at least discussed, if not put in there. I certainly agree with that.
Because it's so factual, so evidence-driven, yet so emotional, so personal somehow.
Compelling.
It is absolutely compelling. It's unfortunate that she died so young, and this is all there is. But it's an amazing work, and it's highly recommended by us here. To anyone listening, we've got it at the library. You might have to put holds. I found one on the Quick Picks just this morning, so I could flip through it again. But if you have not read I'll Be Gone in the Dark, we all recommend it.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And should it be noted that this book came out in February, and 2 months later, the Sacramento police did arrest a suspect?
Yep.
And this book got me in that amateur sleuth mode, and it was interesting to see how many of the connections that Michelle made in this book and the conclusions that she made sort of dovetailed with facts that are now publicly known. Like, she mentioned that possibly genealogy websites could be the place that this case is cracked, and that's exactly how it happened. Someone uploaded his DNA profile to an open source genealogy website and found a match and worked through the family tree from there. She concluded that he was familiar with Rancho Cordova, California, and it turns out he went to high school there. During one of the attacks, he mentioned a name, and it turned out that he had previously been engaged to somebody with that name, but they did not marry. She suggested he may have had military or police service, and the person arrested was in the Navy and also was a police officer in nearby Auburn, California, during the peak of the crimes. So it's really fascinating to see how close she got on the details, and yet there are a lot of suspects who are named in the book, and this person isn't any of them. It's someone who is just that much under the radar that he was able to elude the authorities for decades.
So it's a compelling book, a fascinating case. It's an extraordinary author. I feel like we're ending on kind of a somber note because it's a hard thing to discuss.
It's
a hard thing to engage with.
I'll also mention that there is a lot of love for Michelle McNamara, for her husband, Patton Oswalt, for their daughter, and also back. She was very revealing about everything, and including her relations with her family, with her mother and father growing up, and it just a very dynamic person. And you can read between the lines when she's working with people and her self-deprecation, and she's meeting people for the first time and their ongoing relationships. You can just tell that she created strong relationships with people, and she was just someone that you would have liked to have met.
Sure.
And like you said, it's unfortunate. Obviously, it's unfortunate, but beyond the book, she sounded like a very terrific individual. So
Yeah, I think revealing is the right word that you used. It's she's revealing herself, she's revealing her family, she's revealing secrets of the killer and details of the case. Like, that's what the book is about, is revealing all manner of things that create this intense reading experience.
Yeah, she makes the point that a lot of the power that unsolved cases have comes from not being able to name the perpetrator. And the title of the book is something that he said during an attack, "I'll be gone in the dark." And that's the frightening part, that you don't know who this person is. You know, everyone fears the unknown. And now that there is a name and a mugshot, it sort of takes some of the nightmare away from it.
Yeah, and even some of the detectives that are in the book are in the pressed photos and are part of the concluding case as it's wrapping up. So you can Google it and see photos of what's his name, Paul?
Paul Holes?
Yeah, I think it's Paul Holes. There's a very good photo of him posing, and there's a picture of the perpetrator's face with his name right below it, and it's finally unveiling that and revealing it out of complete obscurity, in a sense. If you don't have a name, you're at 0 out of 1, and then you have a name and someone and being charged for it. So there was a lot of relief coming from that, from my perspective, of actually seeing another person that was on the case besides Michelle and the pictures that are in here in modern day, and seeing the story kind of come to its arc.
right, it's a unique perspective for a true crime book, because a lot of true crime happens in the 19th century or something. People are long gone, but these people, a lot of these victims are still alive and still affected by this. And he was known to have called people years in the future and talked about the time he terrorized them. And I'm sure that I can't even imagine what it would feel like to have that happen, but for at least for them to know a name and a face and to have justice served, I'm sure it would help somehow.
Yeah.
It's not an easy book. It's
not
easy
easy.
to read, but it's not an easy topic, I guess.
I think the psychological terror does kind of seep out of its pages too, and it might, I found myself locking more windows.
Disturbed.
Weirdly. I mean,
Yes.
because it's disturbed acts. And
You're right.
we didn't necessarily highlight that when we first started talking about this, but it's what you're getting into if you read this book. So
True crime is a genre that's not for people who like cozy stories.
Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart.
No.
right.
So that's I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. The library has plenty of copies now, so come on into Des Plaines Public Library and see if you can get it all quick picks or put a hold. I'm told HBO is filming a documentary based on the books, so watch that case. We'll see if there's a guilty verdict coming down the way. Well, thanks, guys. That was I wouldn't say an invigorating talk, but certainly a powerful one. It's a great book. I absolutely recommend it. And I personally don't recommend many books, as we all know. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.